Hi class, Mrs. Calvi here. A quick review on the coordinate plane. What we're going to do is we are going to identify parts of the coordinate plane. We are going to talk about how to plot points or coordinates on the coordinate plane. So we're going to start here, and my page kind of got cut off a little bit, but it says a coordinate plane is formed by two number lines in a plane that intersect at right angles. So our lines are our x-axis, which I have here. This is my x-axis. That is my horizontal line. And my other one is my y-axis, and that is my vertical line. This is a y up here. It just got cut off. All right. The point of intersection is the 0 on each number line. That's right here, and we identify that as our origin. So the number line are called the axes. So as I said, the x-axis and the y-axis, those are the axes. The horizontal axis is the x-axis. The vertical axis is the y-axis. How you can kind of remember is if you draw a Y, you have this line that kind of goes down vertically. That's one way you can remember that this is the y-axis, okay? Now, the coordinate plane is divided into 4 quadrants. Now, what I always do is, for students to remember, this is a coordinate plane, and coordinate starts with C. So if I were to draw a C on my coordinate plane, this is how I'm going to remember where my quadrants are. So where my C begins, that would be quadrant 1, and you see that it's here. When I follow my C, it then goes into quadrant 2. And if you notice that our quadrants are labeled using Roman numerals, all right? We're not actually using numbers, we're using Roman numerals. If I continue to follow my C, I go down to quadrant 3, and then I end in quadrant 4, okay? So again, you are going to be using Roman numerals to describe your quadrants. So if you're ever being asked for the location of a coordinate or a plotted point, locations are either quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. A location can also be the x-axis. A location can also be the y-axis, which means your plotted point or your coordinate lands on the axis itself, or your location can be the origin. Okay, so now talking about plotting coordinates or plotting points, let's go over that. Okay, so if we want to plot a coordinate, this right here is called a coordinate or an ordered pair. Okay, so you might see it being listed as coordinate, ordered pair, or even sometimes you'll see plotted point. Okay, so when we have a coordinate, the first number is always representing your x-axis, and your second number is representing your y-axis. So that means when we go to plot a coordinate or an ordered pair, we are going to follow our x-axis for the first number, then follow our y-axis for the second number. So when we go to plot a point, we are always starting at our origin, which is 0.00. So I would start here. My first number is going to tell me whether I'm going left or right. If you notice, to the right I have positive numbers, to the left I have negative numbers. Because my first number is a negative, from that 0, from my origin, I'm going to go left to -2. Now, many students make the mistake of actually plotting a point here. We are not plotting a point because we only so far looked at our x-axis. We still have to look at our y-axis. So our y-axis is a +3. So from my origin, I always go left or right first. Went left to -2. And my y-axis number is a +3. So if you notice, going up on my y-axis, those are positive numbers. Going down on my y-axis are negative numbers. Because I want to go to a +3, that's telling me I am going to go up, okay? And I'm going to actually plot a point. So ordered pair or coordinate -2, +3 ended up getting plotted right here. So again, You always start at your origin. You're always going left or right first based on whether it's a positive or a negative number. And then you're going up or down second based on whether your y-axis is a positive or negative. So in this case, we went left to -2, up to +3, and plotted that point. Now you would always identify that point with the ordered pair or the coordinate next to your point. So in other words, you would actually put -2, 3 next to the plotted point. You would be a little bit neater, of course. All right, so let's practice plotting some coordinates or ordered pairs. Okay, so I have these 4 coordinates that I want to plot. I listed them as A, B, C, and D. So starting with plotting our point A, which is ordered pair or coordinate 4, 0. So I always start at my origin, so I'm starting in the center. So my x-axis tells me to go to +4, so I'm going right to +4, and my y-axis tells me to go to 0. Well, I'm not going to go up to 0 or down to 0. I'm already on 0, so I would be plotting my point right there. Okay, so this is labeled as point A. All right, so let's graph or plot coordinate for B. -5, -2. Again, I'm starting at my origin. My x-axis tells me to go to -5, so I'm going left to -5. My y-axis tells me to go to -2, so I need to go down to -2, plot a point, and that will be point B. For C, my coordinate is 0, -4, so I always start at my origin. My x-axis tells me to go to 0. Well, I'm at 0, so I am staying. My y-axis tells me to go to -4. So negative on my y-axis is going down, so I'm going down to -4, plotting a point. That would be my point C. And point D, I want to plot coordinate 5, -3. Again, go back to my origin. My x-axis tells me to go to +5. My y-axis tells me to go to -3. Plot a point, label it as D. So now, if I were asked what the location of my points are, I would say for point A, my location is the x-axis because the point lands exactly on my x-axis. So for my location for A, it would be the x-axis. My location for B, well, that lands in a quadrant. So this was on the x-axis. B lands in a quadrant. So remember, if we had our C labeled, right? Quadrant 1, quadrant 2, B lands in quadrant 3. I'm just going to abbreviate for space, quadrant 3, using Roman numerals. Point C. So let's see, C landed exactly on the y-axis. So my location is the y-axis. And D landed in quadrant 4. Quadrant 4. All right, the other thing I want to talk about is the signs of where your plotted point lands, what they would be in your ordered pair or your coordinate. Okay, so if you notice, I have some coordinates plotted or graphed on my coordinate plane, and I labeled them with the actual coordinate, the numbers associated with them. So if you notice, a coordinate that lands in quadrant 1, which is right here, so quadrant 1, both my x and my y-axis are positive, which makes sense because in order to get a point plotted in quadrant 1, starting at my origin, I go right to a positive number and I go up to a positive number. So all ordered pairs that land in quadrant 1 would be positive, positive. So this would be positive, positive. Okay. Now for my coordinate -3, 2, which lands in quadrant 2, my x axis is a negative and my y-axis is a positive. So if we were to plot this, it makes sense. From our origin, we would have to go left to a negative number and up to a positive number. So any coordinate that lands in quadrant 2 would be a negative positive. So we would have a negative positive. For a coordinate that lands in quadrant 3, we would end up having a negative negative. From our origin, we would go left to a negative number, down to a negative number. So it makes sense. We would have a negative negative if it lands in quadrant 3. And in quadrant 4, we end up with a positive negative. In order to land in quadrant 4, starting at our origin, we would need to go right, which is a positive number, and down, which is a negative number. So in that case, we would end up having positive negative. Okay, so if your coordinate ordered pair lands in quadrant 1, your numbers should be positive positive. If it lands in quadrant 2, they should be negative positive. If it lands in quadrant 3, they should be negative negative. If it lands in quadrant 4, it should be positive negative. Okay, that is it for now. That is the basics of a coordinate plane, and I will talk to you guys soon.